Okay, what I wanted to record for you is how you would go about tearing up the farming framework to make a completely new game. Obviously, you wouldn't need to do this if what you wanted to do was add on to farming, but if you want to make a game with a completely new theme and totally different assets, we're going to have to get rid of a lot of stuff to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is just look at what we have. So I've taken the farming project and then I've added two other scenes. I've added a scene called Coral Town. This is the map that's going to be my new game. So this is the town area, or the start of the map. And then I have another scene that is the art scene where I set up all the assets that I'm going to make the coral game out of. So we have lots of growing coral. We've got some coral chairs here. There's some creatures. There's like rocks and objects that you'll find in the scene. And then of course the other scene is the one I started in. That's the farming scene that comes with the farming framework. So what I need to do is gut this scene enough that I can paste just the parts I want over into the farming one. I mean, I could gut it there, or I could gut it here. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is deal with the database, because the database is what hooks up all of the visuals in your game to the information about them. So right now, all of my database is pointing at the farming project. So if you look in here, you'll see that everything says crafting stations, farm. This table says crafting station, or crafting station buffs, farm. So I want a copy of all of these tables that's instead going to be called coral. And then I'll hook those up in these slots. I'm going to keep these original tables in the project until I'm finished, because it can be confusing to set up data if you don't have an example. So this way we can still look back at how the farming data worked previously, but have fresh, clean tables to work in. So I'll stop talking while I do this part because it's pretty boring, and then I'll explain what I'm doing again for the next part. Okay, I have a copy of all the tables now that is appended with coral. So I think what I'm going to do, just to be on the safe side, is I'm going to make one more scene in this project so that I can keep a duplicate of the old farming. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to hit duplicate scene, and I'm going to rename this one to coral import temp. So I'm not going to keep this scene. This is the one where I'm actually going to rip stuff up, just in case I make a mistake. Now that we have scenes, you know, it's simple to do this, so it doesn't hurt to be safe. Okay, so I'm in that that duplicate scene, and so now what I need to do is take those tables I just made and hook those up to this database. So we're going to go just one at a time, into here and find the correct tables and set them up. You can just, if you just type like Coral first, in my case, because that Coral's what I'm doing, and then just put the name of the table, it's pretty easy to pull up just the right thing that you want. So crafting station farm, so I want crafting stations Coral. Now right now, if I hit this little edit button and open my table, I still have the old Coral crafting stuff in it. There is actually a set of empty tables in the project, but because those empty tables don't have a default value in them, if you don't know what you're doing, I don't really recommend starting with blanks. It would be better to use the first few rows of these and just overwrite them with your own data, just so that you understand, you know, what the default value in each of these fields should be. So that's what I'm going to do. I don't have a great memory, so starting from the empty tables is actually pretty difficult for me. There's one exception that I don't know if you caught when I was building those. Probably not, because I'm fast forwarding the video. I did go and get one empty table. I got the empty table for, if I did it right anyway, I got the producer states empty table. Now the reason for that is that there's extra columns in this empty version that we've removed from the farming one to make it easier. Now you could manually put them back to the farming one and it would work fine. But since I need these extra columns for what I plan to do in Coralcraft, I'm just going to start from this empty table for the states. But this one's not too bad because these are actually all asset references. So I don't need to remember any special values or anything like that to fill this one out from an empty state. Okay, so I'm just going to be quiet again for a while, and one at a time I'm going to make sure that all of these are pointing at the table, the Coral version instead of the farm version of each table. A table is just like, if you haven't used them at all, it's just a way that you can have this little spreadsheet looking thing of data. So that was a bad example. That one has nothing in it. So you can see that it can have columns that have different types like strings or whatever. And then it has rows that have the data on your items and other objects in your game. So they're new to core. They haven't been out very long, but they are exceedingly useful. This is basically being used instead of putting a whole bunch of custom properties in a hierarchy, like we did in the original producer and gatherable projects. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is just go back and double check and make sure that I have an appropriate table hooked up in each thing. It just saves you time. I mean, it's really easy to make mistakes on things like this. So I have crafting station Coral, and I'll just go down each one and make sure it's here. You can see I made a mistake. So there I have buffs, but this one should just be producers Coral. Now we haven't actually done very much to the scene, but it will be a bit broken if you tried to play it right now because, as I mentioned, I replaced the producer states with an empty table. If I hadn't have done that, then since all of my tables are just copies of the farming table, the game would have continued to work as it did before. So as you can see, most things will still be functional here because the only thing that I've really messed up is the producer state. So that's like the vegetables and the crops and things. But everything else is still hooked up with the original data that was in the game, although not for long. Okay, so we're gonna stop that there, and I'm gonna do this as a series of recordings because otherwise they'd be exceedingly large. So we'll leave this here. The first thing we did was just get ready to move to the other set of tables.